Georgia Guidestones. Now, I didn't think that things would move so quickly here, as we just got information here recently that there was a notch there. They cut the notch out, and then they put the block that you see right here in his hands up in that spot. Now, what you could see was 2014, this side and this side. This man shows up in a video here, the groundskeeper, which has nothing else to do with it, but he's given orders to come and to remove it. He takes it out and busts this thing into a million pieces. And when he does, the people standing around are like, all right, cool. They even offered to buy it off of him. But he had a job to do. Everybody was cool and respectful, but he broke it into pieces and he handed out pieces to different people, as you can see right here. Now, what is very interesting about this is there's mystery, more mystery letters and numbers. There is JAM on one side, as you can see right here. On another side, there is MM. In addition to the 20 and the 14, there is also an 8, and on another side, a 16. Right there. All of those. Many people trying to decode this. They asked the guy if he was going to be replacing it with anything else, and apparently not. This is what has happened here at the Georgia Guidestones. This mystery cube that revealed 2014 had all this speculation behind it is now yanked, and these guys got so lucky to be there when this happened and to catch this on film and to get pieces of it. I would have been asking a whole lot of questions. I'm sure they was, but this guy just didn't know a lot. He was just a groundskeeper, but I still would have been digging for information. Who was paying him, so on and so forth. But as of right now, Mystery Cube reveals more information and is destroyed. I'll leave links. This has been Dabu7. Eyes open.
Georgia Guidestones in Elberton, Georgia. It's about 70 miles outside of Atlanta. And as you can see here, it's 17-foot tall, strange granite monument that has 10 guidelines printed on it or etched into it about what to do after the shit hits the fan, as it were, and the apocalypse comes. We're going to take a short tour of the Guidestones today. We're going to talk a little bit about its history, and we're going to show you just the area around here, and also some of the vandalism that's been done on the Guidestones in the past 2 years. We'll take a walking tour of that as well. They were built in the late 1970s, around about 1979, 1980. The project was funded and created by a man who went by the name R.C. Christian. That was his pseudonym. R.C. Christian's an interesting fellow because apparently he has some sort of Cold War fears, nuclear hang-up perhaps, that's made him decide that he wants to create, well, what is essentially a giant Rosetta Stone. Though it does have these 10 guidelines on it, I think what is as important as that is the fact that they're printed in the 8 most popular modern languages. No one knows exactly who R.C. Christian was, but it's known that he was backed up by a small group of men and that he was maybe a level of about $250,000 to $300,000. This is the English face of the Georgia Guidestones, and of course the easiest way for you to get a good reading on what the different guidelines are that R.C. Christian laid out for his monument. The first one here at the top is the one that is the most controversial. Maintain humanity under 500 million in perpetual balance with nature. This is a real sticking point for a lot of the folks that research this monument. It reminds us of people like Thomas Malthus, who used to say that the population was just going to grow and grow and that we were all like basically a cancer on the earth. And I think, in fact, Cancer on the Earth is down here on the 10th guideline. So that's caused a lot of controversy over the stones, and we'll go through some of the other ones in a minute, but I mean, as an example of this controversy, you can see here that the face is heavily damaged. And this staining actually comes from epoxy that was thrown, a bucket actually of epoxy that was thrown up here on this face of the stone. And if you look at the language, it's very reminiscent of, well, what I would define as like late 1970s Ted Turner environmentalism. It's got very much that kind of quality to it. And lots of mentions of nature, nature, nature. Like I said, it seems to capture that environmentalist spirit very well. It's interesting that the third guideline here, it says unite humanity with a new living language. As I said before, they serve as sort of a Rosetta Stone more than anything else. The Georgia Guidestones Monument, which is owned by Elbert County, was dedicated March 22nd, 1980, and since has remained a source of mystery and intrigue to its numerous visitors and those who learn of it from afar. Well, I think that's a good way to segue into talking a little bit about some of the astronomical alignments that you'll find in the Georgia Guidestones. If you look here, you'll see that there's what they call the male slot here along the middle of the central pillar. That's meant to mark the equinox and the solstices. You can observe them rising through that hole in the morning on those days of the year. And I think that has to do with the way the angles are cut going into the male slot. So you can line yourself up on one side or the other to see the sunrise. There's also, if you look up into the capstone, you'll see a vertical hole that tracks the North Star, the movement of the North Star each day of the year. So any day of the year you can observe the North Star through the Georgia Guidestones. Those are just a few of the astronomical alignments that you'll find here on the stones. And once again, it's almost like a Swiss Army knife for the people of the future, right? You can translate the languages of the past if they've fallen into disuse or if there are no written records left. You can track the equinoxes, you can know when the seasons are, exactly when the seasons are changing, follow the course of the stars, things that men have been doing for thousands and thousands of years and that we often forget in our modern society. And I think the Guidestones are a great reminder of these things and also a great example of the kinds of things ancient people would do when they would build these megalithic structures. They're not always maybe as grandiose as you might think, but people can do great things even within their own means, and I think R.C. Christian's monument here is a great example of that. Let's walk around a little and look at the flagstone for a moment. So this is the flagstone for the monument, and it does a good job of just explaining the different astronomical alignments as well as telling you what different languages, if you don't already know, are printed on the different stones. They also translate the message on the capstone, let these be guidestones to an age of reason. Also explains the physical size of the monument, and has a few interesting places over here. If you look, there's a mention of a time capsule here on the flagstone that's actually never been laid. The idea was that the people of Elberton would come together, or perhaps the school children of Elberton would come together and lay a time capsule here at some point, and it just never has happened. So a lot of times people will come and visit the monument and think that there's whole other layer of the mystery about this time capsule, because as you can see, the text is just sort of left blank at the end of the line. So there's actually nothing under this flagstone, well, at least nothing that I know of. But that hasn't kept treasure hunters and conspiracy theorists from coming out here and taking their shovels to the flagstone. If you look all the way around, you can see that the outer edge of this flagstone is clearly visible almost all the way around. If you had come out here 2 or 3 years ago, this flagstone would have seemed to sit in the ground almost. You wouldn't have been able to hardly see any of the edges of it. The monument was completely pristine and untouched up until just after the election of Barack Obama in November of 2008. Apparently the people who have it out for this monument, who believe that it somehow represents a Malthusian New World Order, their rage bubbled up right after the Obama election, as it often does after any election, whether it be a Democrat or a Republican. And we saw the damage with the epoxy to the side of the English face, which I talked a little bit about earlier. And if you'd come around here, there's also been graffiti, which you can see sort of evidence of where it's been covered up all over the Guidestones. And this started off very typical sort of anti-New World Order rhetoric and slogans, much like you would see in the films of Alex Jones and others. In fact, many of the quotes from graffitied on the Guidestones at the time came directly from the Alex Jones film Endgame, which we also happen to publish here at Disinformation. It's been this sort of thing basically since 2008, and it's only stopped since they've taken the time and money to clean up the Guidestones. And they've also, if you look just down over the parking lot across there, you'll see the cameras that they've set up, and it says they're always on. So apparently the police have to take a much closer look at the monument now and sort of keep an eye on it. Why Elberton? Why build this strange monument here out in the middle of nowhere in eastern Georgia? We're not too far from South Carolina here. We're in the very deep South, and these sorts of ideas, well, you just really don't hear them kicked around in these kinds of neighborhoods. Elberton is the, quote, granite capital of the world. More granite monuments are produced here than I think in any other city anywhere in the world. I think that's probably had a lot to do with why R.C. Christian chose this location, chose this area. Because remember, he's on a budget. He's not a Rothschild or a Rockefeller. He doesn't have infinite resources. So he's got to go to where the granite is. And if we look at the size of these stones, it would be very hard to transport them very far. You know, so the quarry is literally, the pyramid quarry where they were built is literally just 10 miles away. And even the process of moving them just from the quarry to here was very difficult. So you can see why, just for practical reasons, you'd end up in a place like Elberton. Now, and many people theorize that there are perhaps some ley lines, or that this was the center of Indian territory, or something like that back in the day, or maybe it's on the 33rd degree parallel. We are actually fairly close to the 33rd degree parallel here, but before you get too excited, just know that R.C. Christian was given 3 sites to choose from here in Elberton, 3 different locations where he could put his stones. So, and this is the one that he chose. It was based on what real estate was available at the time, not necessarily the presence of any ley lines or telluric currents or anything like that. Although you do feel a little weird energy when you're out here sometimes. Who was this man of mystery? Nobody really knows who he was. There are anecdotal stories that he said his mother came from Georgia, and that was perhaps why he chose to build the monument here. He publishes his book, Common Sense Renewed, out of a publishing company in Iowa, so I've often wondered perhaps he's from there. But more importantly than where he's from is, what does he represent? You know, is he perhaps a Rosicrucian, a member of something like the AMORC, or another modern incarnation of the Rosicrucians? In case you don't know who the Rosicrucians were, they were this sort of 17th century esoteric fraternity. They're the forerunners of Freemasonry. They're the first secret society, right? And actually, it's not even known whether they even existed at first. They announced themselves through manifestos printed in Germany in around about 1608. And they called for the greater reformation of the whole wide world, the inauguration of the Age of Reason that R.C. Christian keeps talking about in his monument. And it's funny that he picked that name, right? Because the central mythical figure of the Rosicrucian story is Christian Rosenkreuz. We see how much similarity there is between the name R.C. Christian and Christian Rosenkreuz. This could, in fact, just be a coincidence. It could be that Robert Christian or R.C. Christian just chose this name by coincidence or just in an arbitrary way. He often signs his name, in fact, Robert Christian, not R.C. Christian. But I personally, I do believe that he probably was a member of a Rosicrucian or other New Agey sort of fraternity of men. But they probably weren't very big or very powerful. Like I said, this is about a $300,000 project. Let's talk a little bit about what the Guidestones mean. My friend Austin Gandy, he co-hosts the Disinformation podcast with me. He calls them a prison of meaning, and I thought that was a perfect analogy for what they are. You know, it's sort of like in The Empire Strikes Back. You know, Luke looks into the cave or the dark area, and he says to Yoda, you know, what's in there? You know, and what does Yoda say? He says, of course, only what you take with you. The Guidestones are very much the same way. I mean, people bring with them the meaning that they want to have before they get here oftentimes. They come here to protest, or they come here to see what they think is a great or terrible thing, either way. It's very strange. There are a few people that, though, I find that have a very positive view of the Guidestones, which I do. I think building a monument like this was a wonderful way for a man to leave something behind that would really last, and something that would make a positive message about where the world is going, and make a statement about what's wrong with the world now in a lot of ways. If the Guidestones survive, if they're not pulled down by some redneck with his Hemi, I hope they go on to be a historical monument here in Georgia. I think they should be classed as a historical monument. Perhaps one of the very first historical monuments that will mark the period of the late Cold War. The early 80s, the early Reagan years, the last nuclear scare, basically. And as I've said many times before, they are more than anything a monument to our Cold War fears, and a stark reminder of the fact that we have the power in our hands to completely destroy each other. And we can choose to do that, or we can choose not to. Hopefully these Guidestones will never have to be used for the reason that they were designed, and hopefully they can just sort of stand here as a reminder of where we could go and not where we are.
Georgia Guidestones, we're going to talk about them in just a second, but for those of you who are, check this out. Somebody went to the Guidestones and there's been a change. Wow. On the English stone that has English on one side and Spanish on the other. A new block has been inserted in the corner right here, and it has a date on it.
So it's a living monument.
Yeah. And that date just so happens to be 2014. Now it says 2014. This is, to my knowledge, the first major addition to this monument since it was put up March 22nd, 1980. I think we all need to discuss it. That is foreboding and creepy. Okay, so the Georgia Guidestones. What this is a monument that mysteriously showed up in Elbert County, Georgia on March 22nd, 1980. With 10 carved commandments, quote unquote, for a new age of reason. And these commandments are a guide for a new world order. That's what's going on here. There are 10 guides in 8 languages around the different stones: English, Spanish, Swahili, Hindi, Hebrew, Arabic, Chinese, and Russian. And what's the very first guide? The very first guide is to maintain humanity under 500 million in perpetual balance with nature. So right away, we're talking about a stiff curbing of the entire global population. And then underneath that, you have guide reproduction wisely, improving fitness and diversity, which is a cornerstone of eugenics, basically.
See, 2 major planks of eugenics, and at 7 billion people, 500 million is a startling sudden drop that, if that was achieved, would really change society quickly and probably mean a lot of cruel situations. And the rest of it lends towards an international, globalist world system.
I mean, that's basically what's going on with this monument. And there are a lot of conspiracy theories surrounding this monument because the person who came in to set this monument up only met with the company twice. He went under the name R.C. Christian, which a lot of people have said very possibly might stand for Rosicrucian. There are other people that have tied this guy back to potentially being Ted Turner and some of the people like him, such as the Rockefellers, because it was a group of wealthy people that came together to build this anonymously. It wasn't just one guy. But a lot of people say it was Ted Turner. There's some evidence for that, actually, in the guide booklet that came out the year after this was erected, which we're about to get to. But wow, this is very interesting when you consider that the first plank of this says to maintain humanity under 500 million in perpetual balance with nature. And now you have a new block being put in that says 2014.
Well, put in some 35 years ago, a lot of its creators might still be alive. It's still a living monument. It's just been changed. And unlike other esoteric monuments that they drew from, used inspiration of, and alluded to a continuity of their secret knowledge, this one spells out certain political aims explicitly.
And as you can see, this was a picture that was taken before, and you can even see where the little niche mark was for that square to be cut out to add that block. But anyway, so this is what we're looking at. This is the monument here. The block has been added to the side over here that has English on one side, Spanish on the other. It's on the Babylonian side. This top capstone has Babylonian, Egyptian hieroglyphics, and classical Greek and Sanskrit. So it's over on that side that this thing has been added. And some people have said that the Guidestones are not about giving us information, people living now here. This is actually about a message for people rebuilding in the future. Well, that's actually not true. And the reason I can say that it's not true is because this is the Guidestones official booklet that they put out. There's a whole lengthy explanation in here of what this is about. They say it's a message for us now. And they lay it all out as to what it means, what it's about, how we're supposed to take each one of these guides. I mean, it's all in here. And so this is definitely not a message for some far off day after an Armageddon has taken place and they're trying to rebuild the planet. It's not guides for those people. This is something they want us to do now. And when you come down here to the purpose section of these Guidestones, it's made very clear very quickly that these guys aren't joking around. They really do want to curb the population and institute a new world order. It says, in 1980, as these stones were being raised, the most pressing world problem was the need to control human numbers. In recent centuries, technology and abundant fuels have made possible a multiplication of humanity far beyond what is prudent or long sustainable. Controlling our reproduction is urgently needed. It will require major changes in our attitudes and customs. Nearly every nation is now overpopulated in terms of a perpetual balance with nature. We are like a fleet of overcrowded lifeboats confronted with an approaching tempest. We're destroying our farmland. We've grown dangerously dependent on external sources for oil, metals, and other non-renewable resources. Nations such as Japan, Holland, and Haiti are even more seriously overpopulated and therefore in greater jeopardy. And it actually really creeps me out that they specifically mentioned Japan and Haiti, considering the tragedies that have befallen those two.
And the use of the life raft metaphor is one of ethically deciding who gets to live or die based on the triage of the lifeboat scenario. If the lifeboat's overcrowded, you've got to make decisions, who to let go if you're running out of food, right?
It says, in these circumstances, reproduction is no longer exclusively a personal matter. Society must have a voice and some power of direction in regulating this vital function. The wishes of human couples are important but not paramount. The interests of present society and the welfare of future generations must be given increasing consideration as we develop mechanisms to bring rational control to our childbearing. It is extremely important that every national government develop immediately a considered population policy. The need is urgent. It should take precedence over other problems, even those relating to national defense. Population control is a global problem. Irresponsible childbearing must be discouraged by legal and social pressures. Couples who cannot provide a decent home and support for a child should not produce children to be a burden for their neighbors. I mean, you know what pisses me off about all of this, seriously, is people like Ted Turner and these rich globalists. These people are corporate rapists.
And they tell us they've done it for their own good, for all of our own good.
Uh-huh. That guy has 5 kids, okay? And I don't care what decade he had them in or how many people there were at this time. He's the guy walking around saying we need to have a one-child policy for 100 years.
And that's all I'm doing is trying to fight to help save humanity. We've got to stabilize the population. When I was born, there were
so what's wrong with the population? I mean,
with too many people. That's why we have global warming. We have global warming because too many people are using too much stuff. We've got to stabilize population. On a voluntary basis, everybody in the world's got to pledge to themselves that 1 or 2 children is it.
I think 2 billion is about right.
Right, me too. Thank you. Exactly. One-child policy.
And they're saying that poor people shouldn't be allowed to have children. Well, who's causing all of the artificial scarcity? Who's raping the environment with all of these horrible policies, and mega corporations are doing that. I am not personally doing that. You are not personally doing that. It's the system that these elites have put into place to suck off all of us like a bunch of slaves, and then turn around and say, but population is the issue, and you guys are raping the planet. No, we're not raping the planet. It's the global elite who put in this horrible system. They suppress all of the technologies of free energy that would actually make us free and in control of our own destiny, and impoverish everyone with artificial scarcity in this horrifying system of murderous, parasitic industrial complexes that they've built up around all of us. And then they turn around and say, you can't have children, but I can have 5 kids because I got $1 bajillion. It's bullshit. I'm sorry, but it is. It makes me sick. And then they turn around and say because they have all this money and they've taken over everything, they should be able to tell everyone else what to do. It's horrifying that they call this enlightenment. Really? This is enlightened? I don't see you jumping off the lifeboat, Bob. You know? So, this is what the Guidestones is. It's a bunch of snobby, rich douchebags trying to tell everyone else how to live and who should die and that they know everything after they've instituted the most horrible system. I mean, think about how enlightened the new age of reason would be if they hadn't suppressed major technological advances from us all. We would have a cleaner earth. We would all be much more free, much more in charge of our own destiny and our own lives. But no, they don't actually really want that. But they do want to apparently kill us all.
And for those who don't know, this came out of the classical eugenics era of the late 1800s through the 1920s. It was transferred over throughout the world, including in Hitler's Nazi Germany. It went underground, but it came back after the war. The Rockefeller family set up things like the Population Council, and by 1973, 1972, it became a major plank of the United Nations. They had pushed the idea of a population bomb. They had the Club of Rome print the limits to growth, and they figured out a model to stunt the growth of regular humanity, not just population numbers, but the economy, the use of energy, the potential for creativity and just future use, and they've contained us and walled us off, and they are seizing the future, whatever that's going to become, and they're working on depopulating and disenfranchising the rest of the world, population by population, particularly in the developing world, but heavily in Western society too.
Okay, I skipped over this part earlier, but how the section on the purpose actually begins, the very first sentence of it is, quote, "It is very probable that humanity now possesses the knowledge needed to establish an effective world government." That is how the thing freaking starts, okay? Talking about a one world government. But the problem with that is that this world is being run behind the scenes by a group of elite billionaire psychopaths who have screwed up the world. These are the people that have the most power, the most money, and the most influence, and look at the way the world is. And they're going to turn around and try to blame it on us, when most of us had very little say in how things are being run. These are the people that have had all the say, the people that go to the Bilderberg meetings, and all of that kind of black shadow ops stuff that's going on. Those are the people that have had to say, look at the world we live in now. And they're the ones that are going to turn around and say that it's our fault that the resources are being squandered. No, it's the fault of people who hide all of the important technological advances, do not let anyone have those, so that people cannot be self-sustaining, so that people cannot be free. And then they put us into this consumerist system that is run around things like petrochemicals, plastic.
They've made it unfeasible to live outside their system. They've outlawed sovereignty. They've forced people to live in squalor and squander, only to point out that they have mud on their face as a criterion for why they shouldn't be allowed to go into the future, and that those who aren't wanted, which is quite a few people, should be curtailed, squeezed out.
And they're going to sit there and make a monument and act like they know everything. It's just, it makes me sick. This is so backwards and one-sided and wrong. It's not enlightened. There's nothing about this that's enlightened. This is just justification for mass murder. That's all it is. That's all it is. After you built up the horrible system, and yeah, I'm pointing fingers at people like Bill Gates and people like Ted Turner and people like the Rockefellers and the Rothschilds. Those are the people that are behind every horrible thing you see on a major mass scale today. Everything. Those people. Not you and me. We didn't have any say over that. They did. And then they're going to turn around and say, but let's kill everyone. But so now we see this major change. They have added a date to the Guidestones, and that date is 2014. And I mean, what do you guys think they're actually trying to say with this? I thought it was interesting too that somebody has actually drawn all over these monuments, and they've written things like "I am the light," "We are all free." People aren't accepting this because it's just so obviously transparent. Okay, this is not about the good of humanity. And these people that are behind this trying to pretend like it is could have saved themselves the money it costs to put this monument up, because nobody's fooled by it.
And that's all I'm doing, is trying to fight to help save humanity.
In a previous YouTube video I showed you that the Georgia Guidestones are more than just an astronomical clock, and a Masonic manifesto for eugenics and a new world order. We discovered that the real and main purpose of the Georgia Guidestones is not to promote evil, but to reveal and to expose it. So first of all, the Georgia Guidestones confirmed that the rumors of a planned global genocide are more than just the fantasies of some lunatic conspiracy theorists, but that they are real. The Georgia Guidestones then revealed the name of the group being behind these genocidal plans. That of the secret society, the Order of Skull and Bones. And who mainly uses the United Nations as the executioner of their Holocaust. Furthermore, it is exactly those two entities, the Order of Skull and Bones and the United Nations, that had been identified as the two beasts from Revelation 13, whose number is 666. And I stood on the sand of the sea, and saw a beast rise up out of the sea, the United Nations, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and on his horns 10 crowns. And I saw one of his heads, as it were, wounded to death, and his deadly wound was healed, which was in 1991 when the Communist Soviet Union collapsed under its debt, just to resurrect only weeks later as the new capitalist Russian Federation. And all the world wondered after the beast. And they worshipped the United Nations, saying, "Who is like to the beast? Who is able to make war with him?" And power was given to him to continue 42 months, a number yielding literal and encrypted meanings. And I beheld another beast coming up out of the earth, the Order of Skull and Bones, and he had 2 horns, like a lamb, and he spoke as a snake. And he exercises all the power of the first beast before him, and causes the earth and them which dwell therein to worship the United Nations. And he deceives them that dwell on the earth by means of their media corporations. Here you see a map that was drafted back in the 70s by the Club of Rome for the United Nations, in a confidential paper called Strategy for Survival Project. A map consisting of 10 regions, or 10 kingdoms, as they are called in the paper, that show how the world shall look like after the introduction of the New World Order. That the allusion to the United Nations was very well intended by the builders of the Georgia Guidestones, you can already see just by comparing the logo of the United Nations to the Guidestones themselves. The similarities are striking. First of all, does the official flag of the United Nations measure its height and width in a relationship of 2 to 3? Exactly as the capstone of the Guidestones does. As it too measures 2 meters and 3 meters. And you find the same numbers 2 and 3 when counting the segments between the lines inside the white circle of the United Nations logo. And you get 8 times 4, or 32. There again you have the numbers 2 and 3. The United Nations also consist of 193 member states, as indicated by the total height of the Guidestones, and is made up of 5 principal organs: the General Assembly, the Security Council, having itself 5 permanent members, the Economic and Social Council, the Secretariat, and the International Court of Justice, in The Hague, Belgium. The height of the 5 main slabs of the Georgia Guidestones is 5 meters. The English text of their northeastern slab consists of 500 characters. and the Georgia Guidestones are located in a place that measures 5 acres, and which was bought for $5,000. The logo then shows an X-like structure that divides the world into 8 regions, exactly as the Georgia Guidestones do with their 4 cornerstones, and their 2 texts inscribed on either side, making a total of 8 texts in 8 different languages. And then there is the laurel wreath symbolizing the crown of the ancient Caesars, forming 2 horns, exactly as you see on the picture to your right, which shows the Georgia Guidestones viewed from top. The laurel wreath with their 13 leaves on either side also represent the 26 governments that signed the Foundation Charter of the United Nations in January 1940 and 2. Do you remember the 40 and 2 months from Revelation 13 that were given to the first beast? And as chance would have it, exactly 18 days after the signing of the Foundation Charter, or 3 times 6 days, the German Nazis on the other side of the Atlantic decreed the extermination of the Jews at the Wannsee Conference near Berlin on January 20, 1942. Coincidence? I don't think so. But it's not only the Georgia Guidestones that resemble the logo of the United Nations, but also the 2014 cube that had recently been added. Here a rough sketch of the unfolded cube. And there too you see the same X-like structure. When adding the alphanumerical values of the letters J, A, and M at the bottom of the cube, you get 24. And the letter corresponding to 24 is the letter X. And the alphanumerical values of the letters M and M at the top yield twice 13. The exact same numbers you find when counting the leaves on each side of the laurel wreath. And then there is the logo of the United Nations Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization, one of the child organizations of the United Nations. And there too you see a striking resemblance to the Georgia Guidestones. A classical building comprising 6 slabs, 3 at the bottom, and 3 at the top, and whose pillars are entirely made up of letters. In the previous video we have seen that the Georgia Guidestones not only reveal the names of the perpetrators, the names behind the number 666, but that they also contain a hidden calendar, a kind of prophetic clock, that keeps track of their hideous and criminal actions with which they intend to reduce the global population and install their new world order. A calendar which, by the way, started on the day of the foundation of the Georgia Guidestones, March 22, 1980. Thusly we could already identify 2 of those events inscribed in this calendar, the 9/11 attack from 2001 and the nuclear accident of Fukushima, which has been all but an accident. It was a deliberate terror attack masked as a natural catastrophe, and which was caused by HAARP and secretly installed explosives inside the Fukushima nuclear reactor. The evidence is already out there and in here. The same pattern, by the way, they used when faking the 9/11 attack. A similar calendar to this one you will also find hidden in the logo of the United Nations. The white circle in the middle representing the prophetic doomsday clock of the secret elite, pointing to 4 p.m. or 16 o'clock. As does the clock of the Georgia Guidestones, symbolized by the 4 cornerstones. And as shown on the 2014 cube. The same circle can also be seen as a pyramid viewed from top. A pyramid consisting of 4 steps, each step representing 20 years, making up a total of 80 years, or 80 years. And the small circle in the middle being the platform for the missing capstone, that is to be put after the expiration of those 80 years. This pyramid is, by the way, the complement of yet another pyramid. The pyramid on the $1 note, which is the same as the pyramid of the seal of the United States. A pyramid that was erected in 1776 when the United States declared their independence from the British Empire, and as indicated by the Roman letters, at the base of the pyramid. The pyramid consists of 13 steps, each signifying 20 years, or a score, resulting in the same year at its top, when the capstone is meant to be put, 2016. is this close approach to the year 2016, the year of the fulfillment of an ancient hope, as President Bush put it in his inauguration speech from 2005, the year when a missing capstone is meant to be put in place? Is this the reason why the builders of the Georgia Guidestones inserted the 2014 cube? To reclaim public attention in order to remind us of the imminence of this event and to warn us of the dangers that go along with it? Beside the wars in the Middle East and the Ukraine, both of which also carry the signature of the Dark Cabal, there is one more event that started at the beginning of this year 2014, and which fits all the criteria for serving their eugenics agenda. The Ebola virus. Something that is 100% lethal, and which comes along as a natural disaster. As with Fukushima. The current Ebola epidemic began in Guinea in December 2013, before spreading to Liberia and Sierra Leone. And it is the most severe outbreak of Ebola since the discovery of Ebola virus in 1976, exactly 200 years after the American independence, in 1776. And by September 2014, the number of deaths already exceeded the sum of all previously identified cases. Researchers believe that a 2-year-old boy was the index case of the current Ebola virus disease epidemic. He died on December 6, 2013 in the village of Maliondu in Guinea. The early cases were diagnosed as diseases more common to the area. Thus, the disease had several months to spread before it was recognized as Ebola. On March 19, the Guinean Ministry of Health acknowledged a local outbreak of an undetermined viral hemorrhagic fever that had killed 23 people. And on March 25, the World Health Organization, another organization of the United Nations, reported that Guinea's Ministry of Health had reported an outbreak of Ebola virus disease in Guinea, Sierra Leone and Liberia. And on September 25, the very same day, when the 2014 cube had been publicly smashed, the very first Ebola case appeared in the United States. Was the public smashing of the cube then a well-intended clue meant to point at exactly this event, the Ebola plague? And indeed, there is already one very obvious reason why the current Ebola outbreak cannot be the result of a natural cause. Simply because it did not spread from one single point outward, as would be the case when occurred naturally. But it rather spread simultaneously from different geographic points that are separated by many hundreds of kilometers. As shown in this video. And this fact alone proves already that the real cause of the current Ebola outbreak cannot be a natural one. And as chance would have it, exactly around the time of the Ebola outbreak, the United Nations conducted 3 major vaccine campaigns in those areas. Officially a cholera oral vaccine effort, and a prevention programs against meningitis and polio. And also around the exact time, and in the exact same place, another pharmaceutical company, the Canadian Tecmara Pharmaceuticals Corporation, conducted a human clinical trial of TKM Ebola on behalf of the U.S. Department of Defense. Meaning they illegally injected Ebola viruses into healthy Africans first, before injecting them the test products of the antidote. And after rural West Africans realized that vaccination programs coincided with the outbreak of Ebola, foreign-funded medical staffers were assaulted by angry mobs, and an Ebola treatment center in Sierra Leone was burned to the ground. When medicine is exposed to be the problem, and not a solution, the military has to be called in to quell public rebellion. The boundaries of every country in the region are now sealed by groups, and so the truth behind this epidemic will probably be buried with the victims. So what do the Georgia Guidestones have to say to the current outbreak? When aligning the 2 points that matter most in this case, that is the village in Guinea, where the first Ebola victim died, and Dallas, the city, where the first Ebola case on American soil became known, you get this line. A line that passes exactly through the headquarters of the American Centers for Disease Control and Prevention near Atlanta, and which passes exactly through the location that had been initially envisaged for the Georgia Guidestones, at some kilometers due west of Augusta. And here is what the calendar has to say about Ebola and AIDS, the other one of those manufactured viruses that had been let loose in the beginning of the 80s, right around the time when the Georgia Guidestones were erected. Thank you for your attention.
Hey guys, enter the stars, and with the help of the Holy Spirit, we have decoded the Georgia Guidestones. Now, as you know, a block was inserted just this month near the inscription that says maintain humanity under 500 million. And in fact, there is a keyhole that, when aligned, points directly to Guinea, Africa. I suspect that additional blocks will be inserted below the block that says 2014 within the Georgia Guidestones. As each goal is attained, starting with the Ebola virus and the reduction of the world's population. These are the Georgia Guidestones. And the inscription is on this block here. And the block is inserted right here. The keyhole aligns to this red line. Now here is a very good diagram showing the English side here. And the block is right underneath this corner. And this is the keyhole I was telling you about that the sun shines through. It shines through it at exactly a 90-degree angle. There is no mistake, there's no fudging. It is exact. And it points directly to Africa. And that is the intention. World depopulation, starting in the most populated area, which is Africa, with the Ebola virus. And when we go to Guinea, in Africa, we have a direct hit. Now those who want to deny this information are now complicit in the murder. Because every person that denies this because you deny it, you feed into the evil. This is a direct hit of where the 2014 Ebola virus epidemic began. Now, we showed the alignments of 322 degrees of the Georgia Guidestones alignment. And we know that they were built and completed on March 22nd, which is also 3/22/1980. And the mark that I just exposed here is 9 degrees north latitude and 11 degrees west longitude for 9/11 here in Sierra Leone. And this is how they wage mass destruction on life on this planet. You need to share this with everyone.
The mysterious
that you know.
Georgia Guidestones, which some see as an elite manifesto for neo-eugenics and population reduction, have received a strange 2014 update. On a recent visit to the Guidestones, the YouTube user Kafka Winston World filmed this footage, which shows that a new block has been added to the top right-hand corner of one of the stones. The new stone reads 2014. Photos taken years before the new stone was added show an indent where it was planned to be installed. Given the nature of the message inscribed in the stones, the addition of the year 2014 has obviously stoked concerns that something ominous may be in the pipeline that would fulfill the seemingly unattainable prognostication of a global population that numbers below 500 million people. Sometimes called the American Stonehenge, the astronomically aligned Georgia Guidestones located in Elbert County, Georgia, contain 10 guidelines for the future of humanity. The Guidestones, which were defaced in 2008 by protesters, were originally built in 1980 after an unknown person going by the pseudonym R.C. Christian instructed Elberton Granite Finishing Company to build the structure. The most ominous guideline reads, quote, "Maintain humanity under 500 million in perpetual balance with nature," a figure which of course couldn't possibly be achieved without either mass genocide or draconian and long-lasting programs of population control even more extreme than the one-child policy in China, which is enforced via punitive financial penalties and brutal state-sponsored kidnappings and forced abortion. Indeed, the official guidebook to the Georgia Guidestones lists the purpose of the monument as a message to the world of the pressing, quote, "need to control human numbers via, quote, control of childbearing by programs of population control instituted by governments worldwide as part of a move towards the establishment of, quote, an effective world government." So this monument is basically an homage to a world dictatorship which would impose population control measures on humanity as part of a creepy, authoritarian, Brave New World style cradle-to-grave tyranny dressed up as a utopia. And it's rife with hypocrisy, because the very things that have proven to naturally reduce population growth and increase prosperity, development, trade, economic growth, energy exploration, and industrial food production have all been denied to the third world by this very same elite. And of course, if you've actually studied this issue from a statistical and demographic standpoint, the overpopulation bomb is a complete myth. As Professor Hans Rosling authoritatively documented in his presentation, "Don't Panic, the Truth About Population," the problems of rapid population growth and poverty are being alleviated by technology and the raising of living standards in many of the poorest countries of the world. The real problem after 2050 will be underpopulation, and indeed several governments, most notably Russia, have in recent years been begging their population to have more children because of this already unfolding underpopulation crisis. So why do you think a new block which reads 2014 has been added to the Georgia Guidestones? What kind of message does this send? Let me know in the comments below. Check out the other videos, subscribe to the channel. I'm Paul Joseph Watson reporting for Infowars.com.
Alright, I'm going to attempt to decode the cube of the Georgia Guidestones really fast for YouTube, because YouTube has basically revoked my privileges of having longer videos based on the fact that I put a snippet of True TV's episode of Jesse Ventura's conspiracy theory involving FEMA camps and coffins. Ooh. Okay, so they don't want you to know about that. Alright, let's try this. Here's the cube. It was pulled out of the English side, placed into and pulled out of the English side. Yes, there's a spot made for it. I'm not going to care. I don't care about how it was basically made to put there. It was not vandalism, okay? Let's get that straight. You want to look up all the information involving the removal and the placement, you can. We're getting into the cube. There it is. This is the birth of the Rosicrucians, the first 12 members, 1608. This is the birthing of the New World Order, 2014. Alright, here, simple gematria, we get the 7, 9, 6, and 4. Just pulling those numbers out. Here we have the 7 and the 4 added, it's 11. Both sides. Down here, you wouldn't get anything because you would just get 6s if you did that. So I did not do that. But here, we see this is witchcraft and invoking and banishing of gods and goddesses. And I've noted that, you know, going one way, it's going to be invoking; one way, it's going to be banishing. But first, I want to get into the sorcerer's number. What is the sorcerer's number? It is 14. That is the number of the beast in disguise, because it's one short of the divine, which is 777. And in decimal format is 666, okay? And 9/11 used that principle. It was not 93, it was 92 in just the name. 9/11, 9/11. That's all we kept hearing. And you understand that is the number of the beast in disguise. But also, you would get 14 because you would have 11 plus the 3 here. So the 9 drops away. It's a number of illusion. You would have 14. But now I say the next major and possibly the final attack could be, according to the same logic, on 11/5/2014. And there are a number of reasons the cube even kind of hints towards this date. And the birthing of the New World Order would be like the 11/6, but the actual start of the end or the beginning, you know, the birthing would be 11/5. So 11/5, you have 7, 2014 is 7, and you've got the sorcerer's number. Alright, here we go with the invoking. You see, invoking war on terror, or Terra, the earth goddess. And then if you want to banish that, you have the banishing of the war on terror with this. And you would have to flip those around. Here is Terra. It's the moon goddess, goddess of earth as well. And here is the, and this is a tarot card. Tarot card, and this is Jacqueline and Boaz, the sacred masculine and the sacred feminine. And she's got this Torah cloaked, or in her veil, because it is the future. It is yet to be told, because it has not happened yet. So here is the 777. I just wanted to take note, if you drew the pentagram over this, this is what you would get. And over the 6s, and there's the 6s, there's even the base, and see the pyramid here, the all-seeing eye, there's the 14, the 14th stone, or the capstone, over the 13 levels of base consciousness. And you can even see 3 6s there. There's a 9, doesn't add up to anything. There's a lot more here than what I can probably even go into, but I feel like I've grasped a lot of it. And here's the destruction of the 3 pillars of consciousness on 9/11, and the 10 Sephiroth. In the Kabbalistic tradition, there's 9, 10, a total of 10 in the destruction of these 3 pillars here, which if you combine them in the Kabbalistic tree of life, you would have 7, the 7 chakra, or the 10 Sephiroth, if you combine them all into one pillar. So now here you have the Freemasonic pillars here: strength, beauty, and wisdom, and the key to the Stargate, and all the fellow travelers to the east here, which this would be east. You've got the east here, north is there, and the sacred feminine, the sacred masculine, and the equilibrium of the two would be here in wisdom. Alright, so here I wanted to take note that yes, The Simpsons did air an episode that had this picture shown, and this was aired the 22nd of September of 1997. This picture here is significant in that I've noticed that there are actually 14 white sections here, and signifying of a date possibly, and the 10, notice the 10, how spaced out that is. So in Kabbalistic tradition, it is a blasphemy to say there's anything less than 10 Sethirot, which would be 9. Anything more would be a blasphemy 11. So that's symbolic of the date 9/11. It goes around the 10. It's a destruction of the 10 Sethirot. But take note that the 5, this is not 6/11. Okay, this is actually 5. So this doesn't actually point to the 6. It's getting close. Now it looks like it's pointing exactly at the 6, of course. And it is. You turn it upside down, that's what it is. It says 9/11. But right now it says 11/6. And this is the nuclear bomb, mind you. Okay? So everybody turned it upside down for 9/11, but the nuclear bomb is what went off to make this happen and appear in Homer's backyard while he's sitting there drinking a beer in a hammock, because that's symbolic of what most people are. They're completely asleep. They're in a hammock. They're drinking a beer. They're just not paying attention to what's about to smash them upside the heads. So let's get into the hypercube. This is a cube within a cube. That's what the hypercube is. And then if you do it in a two-dimensional plane, you get an octagon. And everybody knows they've seen octagons everywhere. The stop sign. MMA fighting is the destruction of the prison of mind inside the prison of matter. It's symbolic. Go figure. And there's the chalice there, and the phallic here, and you just basically draw the lines there. You would get the hexagram, and then you would, if you basically extruded that, you would get the octagon. So this is all, these symbols are well known, and this is a cube within a cube here. That's what I believe this is. That's what this is, actually. This is an octagon. This has 8 sides to it. This has an open face here. If you were to connect that, and you have all the 4 sides there, you would have an octagon, and you would have the cube within a cube. So I wanted to make that reference because that's what I feel like this ritual was the destruction of the prison of mind inside the prison of matter. Because that's what happened. That chief cornerstone was destroyed. Alright, so the powers of Aten, Akhenaten. These are the powers of 10. It's a play on words, pun. There's M, D, C, C, L, X, X, V, I. 1776. Place those in such an order, and you would get the top adding to 777 or 3. It's the same thing. It's the number of completion, number of God, and the bottom adds to 666 or 1 and 8 and 9, the number of illusion. Here is MM over Jam in English gematria. Since this cube was placed on the English side, English gematria gives us 156 over 144, which is 3 over 9. Ooh, go figure that. Yeah, 3 over 9. 777. 21, or 3 over 9. 666, 18, or 9. Okay, the number of illusion and the ascension from base consciousness to God, to completion, to the equilibrium of the 2 pillars, the sacred masculine and the sacred feminine, giving birth to the prefrontal cortex. And you have this here, you see it here, 9 in the ascension to God, a completion. You start out the base, 9 illusion, into the number of completion here. And you see here the examples, 9 plus 1 is 10, so 1 plus 0 is 1. Nothing is affected. And you've got the beast or base consciousness, beast brain mentality. That's what this all is. This is symbolic. The chief cornerstone. So we've got the destruction / rejection of the chief cornerstone here, which happened on 9/25/2014. This is the man that actually chiseled the cornerstone away and started handing it to everybody who was there. So this happened. I just wanted to take note here. 41 days until 11/5. of 2014. So why is that significant? I don't know. Look, there's the 11-5 there, 11-5 there. That's what I believe the date would be for the attack. But also noting that the invocation and the banishing, see, 11-6, so would actually be complete on 11-6. So the starting and then the completion. Just wanted to take note of that. And so we see this man doing this, and this is 41 days until 11-5, which would actually end up being 4 + 1, which is 5. Isn't that a little bit mysterious there? So every date in November ends up being that date. So if it was 11, for instance, if it was 11-5-2014, we've got 20 and 30, which is 5. But every number, see? So 11 plus the 2014 is 9, the number of illusion. So the month of November, the whole month of November, is a month of illusion. And any number that is in that date, any date, is going to be that date. I just wanted to take note of that. And let's look at the destruction and rejection of the chief cornerstone. In the Bible, Jesus is referred to as the chief cornerstone. In occult traditions, Jesus represents spiritual, intellectual enlightenment, the balance of severity, mercy, and harmony, wisdom, knowledge, understanding, strength, beauty, and wisdom, the equilibrium of the sacred masculine and the sacred feminine, thesis, antithesis, and synthesis, mind, body, and soul. This all drops away. This 9 is the number of illusion, and I believe that this cube was the chief cornerstone, because if you look at the all-seeing eye, it is not elevated. You might think that, hey, that's actually elevated. If you were to pull that down, it wouldn't look right. It looks right the way it is. It's missing. It's missing a chief cornerstone, in my opinion. This is my opinion. I haven't heard anybody say this. This is just based on esoteric research that I've done, and I just want to put it out to the public. So here you go. This is for YouTube. This is done really fast. If you want to know more, just do some more research on your own. But I have seen the other decodings so far on the internet, on YouTube and whatnot, the other videos, and I do not agree. I feel like this is more in tune with what is actually going on with that cube. So thank you for paying attention, and good luck to what's about to come.
Renewed. That was written by a man using the pseudonym Robert Christian, who admitted being the man behind the mysterious Georgia Guidestones. The Guidestones are an enormous granite monument consisting of 4 stone slabs standing almost 20 feet tall, which have an inscription of 10 different commandments engraved on the 8 different sides of the stones in 8 different languages. The commandments are bizarre, to say the least, and some are very unsettling. Number 1 is to maintain the world's population at 500 million people. Other commandments, or guides, speak of creating a world court and a world language. The monument has been the topic of both mystery and controversy, as it sits on public property in the small town of Elberton, Georgia. The true identity of the man, R.C. Christian, who represented the group who financed the project, has remained unknown since the stones were erected in 1980. The publication of Common Sense Renewed shed some light on the subject, but his real name and that of the group he represented remains a mystery. The book explains that Robert Christian is a pseudonym of a private American citizen who is concerned about the growing evidence of decline in the political and economic strengths of our country. It goes on to say that the first 2 printings of Common Sense Renewed were sent to several thousand political officials and shapers of public opinion throughout the world and all members of the United States Congress. Aside from admitting that quote, Robert Christian, is the author of the Guidestones. He explains that he has, quote, chosen to remain anonymous in order to avoid useless controversy and better focus attention on his thoughts rather than on himself. The book is dedicated to Thomas Paine, a deist, author of Common Sense, hence the title. On page 6, the author explains one of the purposes for the monument, saying, quote, the hearts of our human family must be touched and warmed to welcome a global rule by reason. The mysterious man also alluded to transhumanism, a combination of man and machine, saying, quote, we suggest that scholars throughout the world now begin to establish new bases upon which later generations can develop a totally new universal language for men and machines. It will be adopted to our speech mechanism and to the language facilities and patterns impressed in our nervous system. Its spoken and printed forms will be capable of articulate interchange by electromechanical means. It should be noted that when this man first approached the Albertson Granite Association with plans for the project, he identified himself as R.C. Christian, which is a label used by members of the Rosicrucians, a secret society with connections to the Enlightenment and the Illuminati. He also admitted that he had not come up with the project himself, but he merely represented the organization which did. When one reads the guides engraved in the side of the monument and understands that the stone's creator desired the world's population to be reduced by 6 billion people, it can be very unsettling. What's worse is the fact that reducing the world's population by 80 to 95% has been a goal of the Illuminati for some time. Ted Turner, the founder of CNN, Prince Philip from England, Dr. Eric Pianka, and other extremely powerful and influential men have openly stated that such a goal would be beneficial for the earth and its inhabitants. The Georgia Guidestones were no small project to create. Its design, engraving, and installation was extremely labor-intensive, with costs that must have exceeded many tens of thousands of dollars or more. Their existence serves as a scary reminder that the Illuminati plan one day to eliminate the majority of the world's population in order to conserve the planet's natural resources. Their rationale is that when the New World Order's infrastructure is complete, only a maintenance force of slaves will be needed, and the rest of humanity are simply useless eaters, consuming the Earth's resources that the Illuminati want to keep for themselves. This was an excerpt from my book, The Illuminati Facts and Fiction, available in paperback on Amazon.com or ebook on Kindle, Nook, or Google Play. If you're interested in furthering your Illuminati research, I've been down the road that you are on. There's many twists and turns, many strange and eerie things, many frauds, many fictions, but many confirmations as well. So if you'd like to save yourself the time and energy of going down some false twists and turns, I just urge you to pick up the book if you want to learn more. I'm Mark Dice. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Subscribe to the channel. Check out some of my previous videos.
That's the goal. If you have a man-made or engineered virus, why was it created? Is it simply just to kill people? Well, that's one part of it, but if you go further and you go deeper than that, it is to get people to demand a vaccine, a shot, if you will, or a pill. Why would, if you're in a position of control, of power, of ultimate power, why would you want people to demand a vaccine? Well, it's because something's in the vaccine that you want people to then have as a part of their body. Well, what is in the vaccine that you want everybody to have inside their body? It is a DNA manipulator or modifier. I mentioned earlier third strand DNA. There is already, and you can find this on the internet, in existence, a third strand of DNA constructed of silicon. Again, we go back to the silicon chip in computers. The third strand is made of silicon. It is also coated in gold. If you talk about nanotechnology and nano layers, this is extremely thin coating of gold down to a billionth of a millimeter of gold that is coating the silicon from which you are building a third strand of DNA. The purpose of the gold is to increase the surface area around this strand so that more information can be digitally imparted or programmed. Essentially what you're doing is you're creating a third strand of DNA. You are transferring that or imparting it into a person's body through a vaccine that person's demanding because they're afraid of contracting MERS coronavirus or avian flu or whatever it may be. And so the government, if you will, or the powers that be sit back and they kind of chuckle when they say, well, we couldn't have forced people to take this vaccine or to take this hidden third strand of DNA. They would rebel against it. But if we create the problem and present the solution, people will demand the solution. Thus we achieve our ultimate goal of having this DNA in every person changed. Well, let's go deeper. What's the goal? What's the purpose? Yeah, you go around and change everybody's DNA. What do they become? They become a hybrid. The insidious part of this is that once a person is injected, almost immediately their DNA undergoes transformation. Almost immediately they lose all awareness of the fact that they've lost their independence, their ability to think on their own, to make decisions on their own, and to affect them on a moral level. Their moral independence, their beliefs, religious, moral, ethical, legal, all of those go away. If you remove the independent thought and that awareness that you've lost your independence is gone, what then do the powers that be do with these new forms of humans, hybrids? They can control them. They can turn them into a serf class. Not S-U-R-F, not surfers, but S-E-R-F, a class of slaves to serve the elite, to serve the Ray Kurzweils of the world who want to achieve immortality, but they need to have labor to manufacture, develop all of the technologies. And they have enough technologies now. The technology, the scientific world, if you will, has reached the level where they don't care about hiding it anymore. Their agenda is so far advanced, both politically, philosophically, their sense of morals, and technologically, that no longer are they worried about you and me as the serf class and the coming serf class. They're not worried about what we think. They're not worried about us rebelling. And in fact, we won't rebel, partly because right now we've been so dumbed down through a variety of mechanisms. But once people demand the virus and they truly are dumbed down to where they've lost that awareness that something's happened to me, now they can do what they want with us. They are achieving what I call the hive mentality, like a beehive. Worker bees, soldier bees, serving the queen. The queen, in my estimation, is this elite class that's in power, and it's not the politicians. Forget the politicians. This has nothing to do with Republicans, Democrats, Tea Party, libertarians. It has nothing to do with political structure or classes. It has to do with the small group that is in control and has been in control since ancient times.
to address the new addition that's been added to the Georgia Guidestones. For those of you who don't know what the Georgia Guidestones are, in the description below I'll leave a link to an awesome article that details exactly what it is. It's a monument to the New World Order that was erected by the Illuminati secret society. They love to hide their truth right in plain sight. The monument actually has the 10 Commandments to the New World Order system that they're trying to bring in. And also an interesting fact is the person who supposedly erected it was R.C. Christian, which is Rosicrucian Christian, a pseudonym. So it's an indication here, as the Vigilant Citizen points out, that this monument was erected by the Rosicrucians, which is just another mystery school within the organization of the Illuminati. Now, if you notice here, here's the 10 Commandments: maintain humanity under 500 million in perpetual balance with nature, guide protection wisely, improve reproduction wisely with abortion and all that, improving fitness and diversity. These are the 10 Commandments of their satanic New World Order system. So in the description section below, if you click on the article here, you can go ahead and see what their plans are, because the plans for the New World Order system are hidden in plain sight in different ways. Also, I'll leave in the description section a video I just did to the Illuminati Lucifer statue that is erected at the Rockefeller Center. So you have the truth hidden in plain sight all over the place, and people don't have the slightest idea. But what I wanted to talk about here in the video specifically is this new addition. Now, when the monument was first erected, there was this missing cube, and now just recently, as many people have pointed out, a cube has been added with 2014. Now, what does this mean? Everyone that's going to take a guess at it is, in fact, just doing that. We're dealing with an esoteric secret society who, although they do hide their plans in plain sight, don't come out just publicly and say it. So my interpretation of this is two things. 2014 seems to be a significant year in the move towards the Antichrist's New World Order. There seems to be a lot going on. A lot of fear is being created. A lot of stuff is going on. So I believe 2014 could be the year that we see another false flag attack like September 11th. So that could be an indication that they are already planning this year to do something. That's the only thing that I can really figure out with the 2014, but I kind of have a little bit more to say about why they would choose a cube to put in the Georgia Guidestones. Now, when we look at esoteric Illuminati symbolism, we recognize that the cube is used for Saturn worship. They are into esoteric mysteries, therefore Luciferianism. They worship the stars, and one of the gods or stars that they worship is Saturn, the god of Saturn. And this is symbolized by the Illuminati with the black cube. You'll see this thing all over the place. Even if you go to the United Nations in their meditation room, you see the Luciferian black cube symbolized as well. Another place where you're going to see it is in Illuminati media. The movie Transformers, you see that the cube actually creates the gods, the Transformers, the beings that fell from heaven to earth and are having a galactic war amongst each other. Well, their creator is a cube. So again, we see this symbolism of the cube that the occultist, satanic Illuminati use. So is it possible that that's what they're symbolizing, that Satan, the god of Saturn, is now in place for the establishment of the New World Order, that the system is now ready to move forward? I don't know, but it's definitely something very significant. What we need to recognize is that these are high-level occultists. They do nothing by mistake. Everything is intricately designed and orchestrated. The attacks on September 11th were not just false flag attacks to bring in more, more approval to go to war and to convince us to go and fight the Iraqis and all this stuff. There was a very deep spiritual component to the towers falling. And this is what I constantly want to be bringing up in this New World Order Exposed series. It's one thing to expose their plans, but if you don't expose the spiritual component of their plans, you're missing the boat completely, because we are dealing with spiritual forces, not physical forces. The book of Ephesians is very clear. We wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities and powers. They are in tune with demonic spirits. That's why they go to Bohemian Grove to practice these occult rituals. There's always a spiritual component to what they do. On September 11th, this was symbolism, esoteric symbolism. The two towers for them symbolized the pillars of masonry and the old age, and the coming down of the pillars was to symbolize the New World Order system. So they are doing these esoteric things right in front of our eyes. So is there a esoteric significance to the cube being placed at the Georgia Guidestones? Absolutely. Does any of us know for sure what it means? No, unfortunately not. But we do have God to give us spiritual discernment in these matters. There's something going on, and if we just feel the atmosphere in 2014, there's something that's stirring. And it's to cause us to be vigilant, because the plans for this Antichrist kingdom are coming to pass a lot faster than even I expected, and we're seeing this system coming into being. So leave me your comments and your point of view in the description section below. What do you think the new edition means? You know they're all about this occult esoteric knowledge, and why would they put this cube? Go ahead and leave your thoughts below. Thanks so much. This is the Vigilant Christian saying God bless each and every one of you, and as always, stay vigilant.
Okay, welcome back everyone. This is Mr. Cat Eye. In today's report, I'm going to be discussing the most recent activity at the Georgia Guidestones that has to do with that new 2014 block. It has been removed and destroyed publicly. And, well, anyway, I watched the video that showed it being removed, all the sides. I was able to, of course, capture all the numbers and the letters. And after reviewing the block, I was able to discern some things that I'm going to share with you now. Okay, first item up. The block was removed because we're told it was unauthorized. Now, law enforcement was there, so we have to presume that this removal was authorized with the permission of the property owners. Now, they're saying that it was a prank, okay? But it's not, and I'm going to be able to prove to you why. Now, there are those out there that noted on the block, the top had the letters MM, the bottom had the letters JAM, which spells jam, and on the sides, you had the numbers 8, 16, 20, and 14. Now, that 2014 side was the side that we saw once it was placed into position. And once again, just for the point of discussion, I want to reemphasize that this 2014 side was important because this corner tip is where the two solstice sunrise cross. In other words, the precision alignment. And so this was no prank. Whoever did this had very precision, had knowledge of at least the solstice sunrises and the alignment that it creates. That's one. The block was precision cut, and the numbers were placed into position on the block in a manner that was coded. And this is what I'm getting ready to show you. Now, there are those that think the letters MM stand for Master Mason. And that would be a pretty good guess, because there are some fraternal and Masonic elements involved in this. But no, MM does not stand for Masonic Mason. MM is merely two letters that denote the numbers 1313. Now, I'm sure anybody a lot of people have already drawn this conclusion, 1313. But what I'm going to show you, I know you haven't seen, because you would have had to have decoded the entire block and then worked your way to where I'm getting ready to show you. And since I can do that, I'm going to. And it goes like this. The top side, as you can see, is MM 1313, and I'm going to tell you right now, this code 1313 is a code that we have to verify. Once we verify this code, we're going to know that we've been to the limits of what this cube numeric observation is supposed to be for us to see. It goes like this, very simple. All I did was add, okay? Now, the 8 and the 16 side, 8 plus 16 creates 24. And so I put the totals for the sides on the corners. But watch, 16 and 20 produces 36. 20 and 14 produces 34. And that 34 is not only the mind control number that's associated with George Herbert Walker Bush Jr., whose POTUS 43, which is 34 in reverse. But 34 is also significant for this particular block in terms of when it was placed, because it denotes the 34 years that the Georgia Guidestones have been in place since they were erected March 22, 1980. Now, okay. Now, by adding these numbers, going around, when I got to this 8 and 14, I got 22. So all the corners have been done, and let's review them. 8 and 14 is 22, 14 and 20 is 34, 16 and 20 is 36, and 8 and 16 is 24. But since those numbers can be further reduced, I do. But it's important to note the first layer of numbers in terms of what they show us. But you're not going to understand this until I complete all this, so I want to prove myself because I want to show you why these MM 1313 was put here. Because you see, once someone properly decoded the cube in terms of its letters and numbers, you would have arrived at a point where you can verify your decoding. And it goes like this. Once these numbers were reduced once again, 2 and 22 reduces to 4, 24 reduces to a 6 or adds to 6, 36 adds to 9, and 34 adds to 7. Now, okay, now that produces a set of numbers, and let's keep going, okay? Now, on this particular side, this is how I know that there are two key elements to this block that tell me that this is no scam, this is no hoax, and this was not done by pranksters who just happen to be good at stonework, masonry, precision stonework. Okay, this is no prank. And let me show you the two ways. Well, this corner being positioned to the two solstice sunrises is key. I mean, you can't ignore this because it was offset from the ledge a certain amount of distance in order to be able to achieve that feat of being the crossing point for both the June 21st and the 12/21st solstice sunrises. Now, and the owl is looking in that direction, and that's what turned me on to it. But okay, now, this corner, this 2014 side that we're familiar with, and I merely colored the edges here, the corners, so that you understand this is that special corner. Okay, but the math adds to 34. That reduces to 7. But watch this. Once we had done all the math, you of course end up with a 4 and a 7, which adds to 11. And this side over here created a 9. So there is a 9, 11 shown in this corner, but this is what's even more important. The fact that it shows 22, 1022, if you recall, 10 commandments that the Guidestones represent, a message to humanity, 10 items, 10 commandments. The height from the earth to the very top of the capstone, top side of the capstone, is 19 feet 3 inches, which adds to 22. 1022 is a key date I've been talking about. But watch this. Further, adding the 4 and the 6 on this side produces a 10. And when you visually look at this, you then can see the dates 1022, 1024, the two dates one day before the solar eclipse, the one day after the solar eclipse that I've been discussing. Now I said the first item that was key was this corner because it was put there in precision, being extended. It wasn't flush or flat, like all the other cubes. They extended it out so it had a lip and an edge that created that special point. Now, okay, that's one. That's no accident. Whoever did that knew what they were doing and knew why they had to do it that way and knew why they had to extend it out from the edge to that point. They knew this. Okay, so that's a key point nobody can ignore. Now here's another key point. The fact that this side is coded 911 because of the numbers. There are some of you might say, well, maybe, maybe not. Okay, but watch this. This MM, which is 1313, is a code. And having done the math correctly, it's going to show you that I've done the math correctly because I'm going to be able to produce this. Watch this. The 4 and the 9 adds to 13, and the 7 and the 6 adds to 13. 1313, produced from the proper decoding of the numbers, produces the MM 1313. This is how I know I've done it right. And this is how I know that this is the third item that cannot make this a hoax or a scam. Because one, this corner was put there specifically for the sunrise crossings for both summer and winter solstice sunrises. That's one. That corner, the 2014 side, produces a 911. And the side that was hidden produced the code of course, 1022, 1024, the key dates that I've been discussing. But now let's discuss the last item, which is the back side. The bottom, I should say. The bottom. Because the numbers are where they are, it wouldn't matter whether we turn this around and try to do the math over. I would still derive these numbers. The only thing that would be different would be the bottom side has its own code, JAM. Now, there are those that think that, the MM was Master Mason and that the JAM are the initials of the person who did this. No. Once again, it's a good try, but it's not going to work for Mr. Cat-Eye. And let me show you why. J has a numeric value of 10. A has a value of 1. And I've always said, so don't think I'm doing this just now just to do it for the sake of doing it. I've always said, when you see a 1, it's a pause, a comma, and then it's a 1 plus something. So 10 remains pure. 1 plus the 13 adds to 14. 10, 14. Now, if you look at this, because if you add 10 and 14, you get 24. And then by taking what we have actually derived and rearranging those numbers, you can see the date 10, 24, 14. Now, it emphasized 1022 because that's a key date to the ritual. 1024 is another key date, the day after the solar eclipse of 1023. So what we're seeing in this message was correctly ritually coded for something I've been doing and following for years. And so for anyone to tell me that this block was a scam, it was put up there by hoaxsters who just managed to, they paid some guys and they cut it out and they put it up there as a gag. Don't buy that. Because you see, let me repeat the 3 items here that are hidden that you would have to understand once you understand they're there. And I didn't make them up. I'm not stretching nothing. I'm showing you exactly what's there. This corner, this side, over here, okay, it is the 2014 side, which is, after decoding all the numbers, gives you a 911. 11 on one side, a 9 at this way gives you a 911. Now, after you do all the math and the reductions and everything, you end up with a situation where if you cross over, the 9 and 4 is 13, the 7 and 6 is 13, verifying the center code of 1313. That's how I know. If you see it on top, once you get to that number at the end, or you can produce it, you've reached the end of the decoding. So ergo, I went to the back side, the bottom side, and found that there again, 10, 14, 10 and 14 is 24. And what's it show us? 10, 24, 14, a date after the solar eclipse of 1023, a date that I've already identified and that I've been discussing for quite a while. So this is not new news for me. The only thing that's news is that they went out of their way to make a public report and to show everyone of them removing it and destroying it. They destroyed it in the public eye for a reason, because you see, their ritual has been tainted. It's been exposed, uncovered, and, well, it's no longer hidden, is it? And if it's no longer hidden, then their ritual has been undermined. And so they have removed, what's been found. But there's innuendo as if they may replace, that this was not the real block, which is why it was removed, because it was unauthorized. That's what they're claiming. And that there's indications they may replace it with the real block. Now, if the real block is put back into position, please note the edge, and please note the numbers, because if they change, well, then they're doing something different. They're reconstituting the ritual that's been uncovered and redoing it again in public to try to keep it secret, because that's how they do things. Now, this, I believe, was placed into position sometime around June 21st, because if the ritual protocols were meant to be adhered to, then the sunrise of June 21st would have aligned with this point on that date, as it's going to again on 12/21. And so this is not, you see, these people that are claiming this is a gag, a joke, a scam, don't buy it, don't believe it for 1 second. Now, this is the code. Like it or leave it. This is Mr. Cat-Eye saying thanks for watching and considering. See you guys next time.